Let's pull up the first story, and this is the one that actually kind of freaks me out. From timcast.com, Rittenhouse jury was recorded outside of the courthouse, trial judge says. Wisconsin judge Bruce Schroeder announced that someone had recorded the jury in Kyle Rittenhouse's trial getting off the bus this morning. The identities of the 18 members of the jury have been sealed and kept anonymous during the trial. On the morning of November 9th, someone was observed recording the group before they arrived by bus. Quote, "At pickup, there was someone there and video recording the jury, which officers approached the person and required them to delete the video and return the phone to him," Schroeder said. "I've instructed that if it happens again, they are to take the phone and bring it here. Something like that should not have occurred. I'm frankly quite surprised it did." The news comes shortly after Cortez Rice, George Floyd's nephew, said in a live stream that he knew there were cameras in the courtroom and that they were, quote, "definitely people taking pictures of the jury and everything." Jury selection was difficult because the case extensive media coverage. At least 12 potential jurors were dismissed because they acknowledged they had strong feelings about the case. By November 2nd, 20 people had been selected, including 9 men and 11 women. Of the selected group, 12 would serve as jurors while 8 were alternates. Safety concerns were expressed by jury members during the selection process and mentioned fears of riots following the verdict. One juror was dismissed after making a joke. A second juror was dismissed last week due to an issue with her pregnancy. Quote, "Rittenhouse is on trial for fatally shooting 2 men and wounding a third." I think, for the most part, we know a lot of the details about Rittenhouse and the trial, but we'll get into more about the trial details in a second. This is where I think this is where Kyle could lose. So we've been talking quite a bit about the trial. We've been talking about how for the past several days, and the latest news today is that the prosecution they've rested their case, or however the proper terminology is. Their case has been rested. And now it's going into the defense's case in chief. They're now bringing in their witnesses. They brought in the state. So I know, Steve, you haven't been following this, but I'll give you some context. The state brought in Richie McGinnis. It was their witness, and he made them look miserable. He said, this guy was attacking Kyle. They brought in another witness who said one of the guys who got shot threatened to kill Kyle. And then they bring in Gage Grosskreutz, who testified that it wasn't until he pointed his gun at Kyle Rittenhouse that he got fired upon. After seeing all of that, my answer is like, wow, my prediction is like he's probably going to get acquitted on most of these charges. He might get a misdemeanor gun charge. He might get a manslaughter charge, but all the murder stuff, it's all out the window. Then we hear that somebody is filming the jury, and we know what that leads to.
It's an amazing story. And actually, just as I'm sitting here listening to you and we were just talking about it, I'm seeing why it's so interesting. And how you've got this situation where there's a narrative, and the narrative has to be upheld at all costs. This is what happens with the media, as we know. And yet the facts just one by one start to chip away at it. And when you talk about the jury, I mean, that's really scary. Why is that even allowed to happen? I mean, what are the details of that in terms of like where they were filmed, and shouldn't they have
the bus pickup?
More, yeah, but
the jury's being picked up.
How
by
do they
the
know
deputies.
where that is? What's that about?
Right. So we have this viral video where they're basically saying, we know who the jury is. This guy. It sounds like he's saying if the jury doesn't give them the verdict they want, they're going to target them. And we saw that during the Chauvin trial with the George Floyd cop, Derek Chauvin. They were rioting in the streets. People had to be brought into the courtroom with armed police. One of the witnesses' houses was covered in blood, like a pig's head or something, but he had moved from there. But they're targeting the jury and the witnesses.
They should treat targeting jurors as targeting children for legal purposes. I'd love to see people.
But there must be some
hammer down.
There must be big. I mean, when the judge says, "Oh, I'm surprised," and what did he say? Disappointed. I don't know what he said.
I'm surprised this happened.
I mean, yeah. to put it mildly. I mean, there? To your point, isn't there a? Isn't this a crime?
He doesn't get it.
Intimidating a jury.
Obstruction of justice,
isn't it?
I don't know.
I'm absolutely miles from being a lawyer. There must be something.
It's interesting that he's surprised because I'm not. If you're looking at this story online, on social media, there's a whole bunch of people threatening the jury. There's a whole people threatening that there's going to be rioting. There's going to be huge protests in response if they don't get the decision that they want to get in this specific trial. So, I mean, he shouldn't be surprised because this is a high-profile case that that the world is watching right now, this is going to be significant because you see the party lines split,
Yeah.
you see the agendas, you see the narratives, and people are playing this off as a part of the larger political wars that are happening in this country that are becoming more dangerous to be played.